My brother stared at me in the middle of the baggage claim like he was looking at a dead man. For 3 full seconds he didn't move. Then his face tightened. "You've got some nerve showing up here." That wasn't the reaction I had imagined. I had spent months planning this surprise. My daughter was hiding near the rental car counter with her phone recording. I had pictured a hug, maybe tears, maybe one of his old jokes. Instead, my brother stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Did Mom tell you before she died?" I felt the floor shift under me. "Tell me what?" He looked past me at my daughter. Then he said the one sentence that changed everything I believed about the last 20 years. "I never stopped trying to find you." Full story. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 54 years old when I saw my older brother for the first time in 21 years. I wish I could tell you there was one dramatic event that tore us apart. There was. No stolen money. No fight at a wedding. No affair with someone's wife. Nothing clean enough to point at and say, that's where it ended. Our relationship died the way a lot of family relationships die. Slowly. One missed call at a time. One holiday skipped. One misunderstanding left alone because neither person wanted to be the first to sound needy. My brother's name is Michael. He is 3 years older than me, although when we were kids, he acted like he was 20 years older. He taught me how to ride a bike behind our father's hardware store. He showed me how to throw a curveball. He also convinced me that swallowing watermelon seeds would make vines grow out of my ears. That was Michael. Half protector, half tormentor, all confidence. Growing up, I followed him everywhere. We lived in a small town in western Pennsylvania where everybody knew our father and almost everybody owed him money. Dad owned Mercer Hardware on Main Street. It smelled like sawdust, motor oil, and the peppermint candies he kept in a glass jar beside the register. Michael worked there from the time he was 14. I worked there too, but I hated it. Michael could talk to anyone. Farmers, contractors, old women looking for the right kind of light bulb. He remembered names and measurements. He could tell when someone needed a washer even if they came in asking for a bolt. Dad used to say Michael had the store in his blood. Then he would look at me and say, "Daniel's got something else in his." He never said what that something else was. I don't think he meant it as an insult. But it felt like one. I was the restless one. I wanted to leave town. I wanted cities, airports, unfamiliar streets, and a job where no one knew my father. Michael wanted to stay. At least that was what I told myself. Our mother Ruth tried to keep us close. She was the kind of woman who called at exactly 7 every Sunday night. If you didn't answer, she called again at 7:10. Then 7:15. Then she called your spouse. She believed family problems could be solved with food and forced proximity. For years she was probably right. I left Pennsylvania when I was 27. I had been offered a job with a commercial refrigeration company in Arizona. The pay was good. The weather looked unreal. And my wife at the time, Lisa, was pregnant with our first child. We told everyone it would only be for a few years. Long enough to save money. Long enough to see something different. Long enough to decide what came next. Michael helped us load the moving truck. At the end of the day, we stood in the empty living room of the house Lisa and I had rented. There were rectangles on the walls where our pictures had been. Michael handed me a beer. "You'll be back," he said. I laughed. "Probably. You hate heat. I'll buy a fan. You hate strangers. I'll make friends. You hate being more than 10 minutes from Mom." That one made me quiet. Michael smiled and bumped his shoulder against mine. "You'll be back," he repeated. I didn't come back. Not for good. At first, Michael and I talked all the time. He called when Sarah was born. He mailed her a pink baseball glove before she could even hold her own head up. I sent him pictures. He sent me stories about the store. We argued about football. We complained about Dad. Normal brother stuff. Then Dad had a stroke. It happened 2 years after I moved. Michael was the one who found him collapsed behind the store counter. I flew home the next morning. Dad survived, but he lost most of the movement on his right side. He couldn't run the business anymore. Michael took over. Not officially at first. He just started opening the store, paying invoices, making deliveries, and driving Dad to medical appointments. I stayed for 11 days. 11 days. I remember that number because Michael brought it up later. On my last night, we stood in Mom and Dad's kitchen. Michael looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled. There was dried paint on one sleeve from a delivery he had made that afternoon. I told him I needed to fly back because Lisa had Sarah and couldn't handle everything alone. That was true. But it was also true that I wanted to leave. Dad's condition scared me. The store depressed me. Michael's silence made me feel guilty. So that's it, he asked. What do you mean? You're going back. I have a job, Mike. I have a job. You have the store. I didn't choose the store this week, it got dropped on me. What do you want me to do, move back tomorrow? He stared at me. I want you to act like this happened to both of us. That sentence stayed with me for years. At the time, I heard it as an accusation. Now I hear it as a plea. But I was 30 years old, defensive, and terrified of being pulled back into the life I had escaped. I flew across the country, I said. For 11 days. What would be enough for you? I don't know, Danny, maybe stay long enough to see what we're dealing with. I can't lose my job. And I can't lose mine either, but apparently one of us gets to care about that. We said worse things after that. Not cruel things. Just sharp ones. The kind designed to make the other person feel selfish. The next morning, Michael didn't drive me to the airport. Mom did. Before I got out of the car, she squeezed my hand. Your brother is scared, she said. So am I. I know, but Michael gets angry when he's scared. And I leave. She looked at me with tired eyes. You said it, not me. Dad lived another 7 years. During those years, Michael and I slowly became strangers. We still spoke. At first. But every conversation carried the weight of the previous one. If I asked about Dad, Michael sounded irritated. If he asked when I was visiting, I heard judgment in his voice, even when there might not have been any. I came home twice a year. Then once. Then I missed Christmas because Sarah had pneumonia. The next year, Lisa and I were having marriage problems and I couldn't afford 4 plane tickets. Michael said he understood. His voice said something else. By then he was married to a woman named Claire. I had met her only twice. She seemed kind. Patient. The exact type of person Michael needed. They had a son, Evan, whom I barely knew. I sent birthday cards. Sometimes late. Sometimes with cash because I had no idea what he liked. Michael sent gifts to Sarah. He never missed. That made me feel worse. When Dad died, I came home alone. Lisa and I were separated by then. Sarah was 9. I stayed at Mom's house. The funeral was on a cold Thursday morning in February. After the burial, people crowded into the church basement eating ham sandwiches and potato salad. Michael stood near the coffee urn, shaking hands. He looked older. Not old. Just worn. I walked over and asked if he needed help cleaning out Dad's things. He said already done. When? Over the last 7 years. I knew what he meant. I let it go. That night we had our worst argument. Mom had gone to bed. Claire had taken Evan home. Michael and I were sitting in the living room with the television off. Dad's empty recliner was between us. I told Michael I wanted Dad's wristwatch. It wasn't expensive. It was a scratched silver Timex he wore every day. Michael said he had promised it to Evan. I thought he was being spiteful. He thought I was showing up at the end and picking through the pieces. The argument grew until it wasn't about the watch. It was about everything. You left me here to handle all of it, he said. I didn't leave you, I moved. You moved and every problem became mine. I had my own problems. Yeah, your problems always had plane tickets attached. I stood up. You think I had it easy. I think you had choices. So did you. His face changed when I said that. I saw it. But I was too angry to stop. You could have sold the store, I continued. You could have hired help, you could have said no. He was our father. He was my father too. Not from where I was standing. That was the last real conversation we had for 21 years. I left before sunrise. I didn't say goodbye to Michael. I kissed Mom on the cheek while she was still half asleep and told her I had moved my flight. She asked if Michael was driving me. I said no. She closed her eyes. "Don't let this harden," she whispered. But I did. We both did. For the first few years, Mom gave us updates about each other. Michael renovated the store. Michael's son made the baseball team. Michael had knee surgery. Sarah won a science award. I got promoted. Lisa and I divorced. Mom passed information back and forth like a switchboard operator connecting two people who refused to speak directly. Sometimes she tried to trick us. She would tell me Michael was visiting on a certain weekend, hoping I would book the same dates. Or she would put me on speakerphone without warning while he was in the room. We always found a way around it. Tell him I said hello. Tell Daniel we're heading out. Ask Michael if the roof was repaired. Tell him yes. We spoke through her even when we were close enough to hear each other. It sounds ridiculous now. Because it was. But pride feels reasonable when you're inside it. You tell yourself you're protecting your peace. You tell yourself the other person made their choice. You repeat the old arguments until your memory becomes a lawyer working only for your side. Years passed. My daughter grew up. She stopped asking why we never visited Uncle Michael. She only remembered him from photographs. There was one picture she loved. Michael was holding her when she was about 18 months old. She had a fistful of his hair. He was pretending to scream. Sarah kept that picture taped beside her desk through high school. I never asked why. Maybe she liked seeing proof that our family had once been normal. Mom died when I was 49. That should have reunited us. It didn't. Her death was sudden. An aneurysm. She was gone before the ambulance reached the hospital. Claire called me. Not Michael. Claire. Her voice was shaking. Daniel, you need to come home. I did. I landed in Pittsburgh the next afternoon. Michael was standing near the hospital entrance when I arrived. For 1 second I thought he might hug me. Instead he nodded. Danny. Mike. That was it. At the funeral home, we moved around each other like coworkers who had once had a disagreement. We chose flowers. We signed paperwork. We answered questions about hymns and photographs. We did not talk about us. After the service, Michael handed me a cardboard box. Mom had some things marked for you. I took it. Thanks. He looked like he wanted to say more. So did I. Neither of us did. The box sat unopened in my garage for almost 5 years. That is not something I am proud of. Every time I saw it, I told myself I would open it when I had enough time. What I really meant was when I had enough courage. By then, I was working as a regional maintenance supervisor for a chain of grocery warehouses. Sarah had finished college and moved back near me. She was 28, engaged, and much braver about emotion than I had ever been. One Saturday, she came over to help me clear out the garage. She found the box. The top was covered with dust. What's this? Your grandmother's things. You never opened it. I looked through some of it. That was a lie. Sarah knew immediately. She sat down on an upside-down bucket and pulled the box toward her. Dad. Not today. She died 5 years ago. I know when she died. Then why is this still sealed? I snapped at her. I told her it was private. I told her she didn't understand. She stood up. Then helped me understand. I didn't answer. Sarah looked at the handwriting on the side of the box. Mom had written my name in thick black marker. Under it in smaller letters she had written, "For when he's ready." Sarah read it out loud. Then she looked at me. I think she knew you pretty well. We opened the box. Inside were ordinary things. Dad's old pocket knife. Several photographs. A Christmas ornament I had made in elementary school. A stack of report cards. Mom saved everything. At the bottom was a bundle of envelopes tied with blue yarn. There were 12 of them. Each had my name on the front. None had stamps. The handwriting belonged to Michael. My first thought was that Mom had written his name for him. I don't know why. Maybe because the alternative was harder. I picked up the first envelope. The date in the corner was 2 months after Dad's funeral. Inside was a 3-page letter. Danny, I'm writing this because every time I try to call, I hang up before it rings. I keep hearing what you said about me having choices. Maybe you were right. Maybe I chose to stay and then blamed you for leaving. I'm still angry. But I don't want the last thing between us to be an argument about Dad's watch. I gave the watch to Evan because Dad told him it would be his one day. It wasn't about keeping it from you. I should have explained that without acting like an ass. Call me when you're ready. Mike. I read the letter twice. Then I opened another. It had been written the following Christmas. Danny. Mom says you aren't coming this year. She says Sarah has a school performance. I told her that was fine, but she knew I was disappointed. Claire says I should call you. I don't know how to start. Evan asks about his cousin. I show him pictures. He thinks Arizona is beside California, which I guess is close enough for a 6-year-old. Merry Christmas. The store is still standing. So am I. Mike. Every letter was the same in one way. Michael kept trying to begin. He wrote after birthdays. After Mom visited me. After Sarah graduated high school. After my divorce. He wrote when he heard I had been in the hospital for gallbladder surgery. Some letters were angry. Some were only a few lines. One simply said, I almost called today. I wish I had. The final letter had been written 6 months before Mom died. Danny. Mom keeps telling me time is getting away from us. I tell her we have time because that is easier than admitting I don't know how to fix this. I don't even remember what winning is supposed to look like anymore. You staying gone. Me proving I was right. We are both getting old. I saw a man in the store today who looked like Dad from behind. For a second I thought it was him. Then I thought of you. I hope you're all right. Mike. I sat on the garage floor with the letters around me. Sarah was crying. I was. Not at first. I was too confused. Why didn't he send them? I asked. Sarah wiped her face. Maybe Grandma stopped him. Why would she do that? Maybe he gave them to her. To mail. I don't know. I became angry. Anger came easier than grief. I blamed Michael for not sending them. I blamed Mom for keeping them. I blamed myself for not opening the box sooner. Mostly I blamed time. But time hadn't hidden the box in my garage. I had. Sarah picked up one of the envelopes. You need to call him. I don't even know if his number is the same. We can find it. What am I supposed to say? The truth. That's not a phone conversation. Then go see him. I looked at her. The idea made my chest tighten. Just show up. He showed up for Grandpa every day for 7 years. That hurt. Sarah saw it. I'm sorry, she said. No, you're right. We searched for Michael online. The hardware store had closed 3 years earlier. There was a photograph of the empty storefront in a local newspaper article. A pharmacy chain had purchased the block. Michael and Claire had moved to North Carolina. Their son Evan was married and living in Ohio. I stared at Michael's photograph on Claire's social media page. He was standing on a beach holding a fishing rod. His hair was almost completely gray. He wore glasses now. He looked happy. He also looked like a stranger. Sarah contacted Claire without telling me. When she confessed, I was furious for about 30 seconds. Then she showed me the reply. Claire had written, he talks about your father more now and about Daniel. He pretends he doesn't, but he does. Sarah and Claire planned everything. Michael was flying to Phoenix for a trade convention related to his new job. He worked for a building supply distributor. He thought a driver would meet him at the airport. I would be that driver. The plan sounded ridiculous. Too dramatic. Too risky. What if he gets angry? I asked. Sarah shrugged. Then he gets angry. What if he walks away? Then at least you'll know you tried. What if he doesn't recognize me? She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, I think that might be the saddest part. For 2 weeks I barely slept. I carried Michael's letters around in my work bag. I read them during lunch. I studied the dates. Some had been written during periods when I was completely sure he had forgotten me. That was the worst part. For years I had told myself a simple story. I left. He judged me. We fought. He stopped caring. Simple stories are comfortable. Even painful ones. Michael's letters made the story complicated. They meant he had missed me. They also meant he had stayed silent. Just like I had. On the morning of his flight, I shaved twice. I changed shirts 3 times. Sarah laughed at me. You're not going on a date. It feels worse. We reached the airport early. Sarah positioned herself near a column across from baggage claim. I waited behind a row of seats. When passengers began coming down the escalator, my hands started shaking. I recognized Michael immediately. Not because of his face. Because of the way he walked. He had a slight dip in his left shoulder from an old football injury. I would have known that walk anywhere. He was pulling a small rolling bag. He wore a navy jacket and carried a folded newspaper under his arm. For one strange second, I saw him at 16. Then he turned his head and I saw the years. He looked tired. Older than the beach photograph. He stopped at the carousel and checked his phone. I moved behind him. Close enough to touch him. Sarah stood across the room recording. Michael had no idea. I could smell his aftershave. It was the same brand Dad used. That almost broke me. I had planned to say something clever. Maybe ask whether he still threw a baseball like a girl. Maybe mention the watermelon seeds. Instead, I stood there frozen. 21 years and I couldn't take one step. Then Michael shifted backward and nearly bumped into me. I moved aside. He glanced over his shoulder but didn't look directly at my face. I don't think he really saw me. To him, I was just another traveler. I followed him around the edge of the carousel. He checked the luggage tags as bags passed. I tapped his right shoulder. He turned right. I stepped left. It was childish. It was also the most natural thing I had done all morning. When we were boys, I used to do that to him constantly. Tap one shoulder, move to the other side. Michael hated it. Or claimed he did. He faced forward again. I waited. Then I tapped his left shoulder. This time he spun around quickly. I ducked behind a tall man carrying golf clubs. Sarah later told me she nearly ruined the recording because she was laughing. Michael looked around, irritated. He muttered something under his breath. I followed him again. The third time I didn't move. I touched his shoulder and stayed where I was. Michael turned. His eyes moved across my face without recognition. Then they came back. I watched the exact moment he knew. His mouth opened slightly. The color left his face. His hand tightened around the handle of his suitcase. Danny. My throat closed. Hey, Mike. He stared at me in the middle of that baggage claim like he was looking at a dead man. For 3 full seconds he didn't move. Then his face tightened. You've got some nerve showing up here. That wasn't the reaction I had imagined. I had spent months planning this surprise. My daughter was hiding near the rental car counter with her phone recording. I had pictured a hug. Maybe tears. Maybe one of his old jokes. Instead, my brother stepped closer and lowered his voice. Did Mom tell you before she died? I felt the floor shift under me. Tell me what? He looked past me at Sarah. He had spotted her. Then he looked at the phone in her hand. His expression changed from anger to confusion. I never stopped trying to find you, he said. I know about the letters. Michael went still. What letters? The ones you wrote me. His face hardened again. I didn't write you letters. I thought he was lying. I actually thought he had been caught in some private embarrassment and wanted to deny it. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the last envelope. I had brought it with me. Michael stared at the handwriting. Then he took the letter. His eyes moved over the page. That's my writing, he said. I know. I didn't write this. Mike. I'm telling you I didn't write this. He turned the page over as though he expected an explanation on the back. I looked at Sarah. She had stopped recording. Then who did? I asked. Michael read the first few lines again. His face changed. Mom. What? She used my old letters. What old letters? Michael gripped the paper. After Dad died, I wrote you twice. Only twice. I wrote more than that. I threw most of them away, but I gave two to Mom. To send to me. Yes. I never got them. He laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Of course you didn't. What is that supposed to mean? Michael looked around at the crowded airport. People were moving past us. Suitcases rolled. A child was crying near the escalator. He lowered his voice. Mom kept telling me you didn't want contact. She told me the same thing about you. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke. I felt sick. When I asked for your address after you moved apartments, Michael said, she told me you had asked her not to give it out. I never said that. She said you wanted space. She told me you were done talking about me. Michael shook his head. I called your work once. When? After Lisa left. I remembered that period. I had been sleeping badly. Drinking too much. Working every shift I could get. The receptionist said you were out, he continued. I left my number. No one gave it to me. I called again, a man answered, your supervisor maybe, he said you told them not to put family calls through. I never told anyone that. Michael stared at me. Then he said, Mom told me you changed your number because I kept bothering you. I had to sit down. There were metal seats beside the carousel. I lowered myself into one. Michael remained standing. Sarah came closer. Grandma wrote the letters, she asked. I think she copied things I said, Michael replied. Some of those lines sound familiar. Why would she do that? I asked. Michael looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Because she needed us angry at each other. That makes no sense. It does if you know what happened with the store. I stood again. What happened with the store? Michael looked exhausted. The year after Dad died, I found out he had borrowed against the business. I knew there was debt. You didn't know how much. He gave me the number. It was more than $400,000. I thought I had heard him wrong. Dad had used the store and their house as collateral. Some of the money covered medical bills. Some kept the business alive. Some had disappeared into investments Michael could never fully trace. If we had sold immediately, Michael said, there might have been enough left for Mom to keep the house, maybe. What does that have to do with us? Dad's will left the store to both of us. I stared at him. No, he left it to you. That's what Mom told you. Yes. Michael let out a slow breath. You own 40%. I felt cold. Even in the warm airport. I never signed anything. Mom had power of attorney documents. For Dad's medical care. And financial authority, some of the signatures were questioned when I finally hired a lawyer. I tried to follow what he was saying. You think Mom forged my signature? I know she did. No. She transferred your share to me, then she told me you had refused the debt and wanted nothing to do with the business. That's not true. She told me you said the store could die with Dad. I never said that. I know that now. The noise around us seemed to fade. For years, Michael had believed I abandoned him with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. For years, I believed he inherited everything and still resented me for leaving. Mom had stood between us, translating every silence into rejection. Sarah sat beside me. Why would Grandma do that? She asked again. Michael finally sat down too. He looked at the letter in his hands. Because if Daniel came back, he might ask questions. About the debt. About everything, about the house, about Dad's accounts. I shook my head. This is crazy. Michael nodded. Yes. You're accusing Mom of stealing. I'm not accusing her, I found the records. Why didn't you tell me? How? You could have called. I did. One time. More than one time. You could have come to Arizona. And say what? Hi, Danny. Mom says you hate me, but I think she committed fraud. Yes. Michael stood. People turned to look at us. He lowered his voice again. You think I didn't consider it? Claire begged me to find you, but every time I tried, Mom had another explanation. You changed jobs, you moved, you didn't want me talking to Sarah, you blamed me for the divorce. She knew exactly what to say. I wanted to defend her. Mom had been loving, generous. She mailed Sarah birthday cards covered in stickers. She remembered every school event. She called me every Sunday until the year she died. But people are not only one thing. That was what I had to face. My mother loved us. She also manipulated us. Maybe she had been terrified of losing the house. Maybe she thought keeping the store open was protecting Dad's legacy. Maybe one lie created another until she couldn't find a way out. Understanding the fear did not erase what she had done. Michael looked at Sarah. I'm sorry this is happening here. Sarah shook her head. No, I'm glad it's happening. He looked at her properly for the first time. You look like your dad. That's what people tell me. You were tiny the last time I saw you. I have pictures. Michael smiled. It was small and painful. I sent you that glove. The pink one. You remember. Dad kept it. Michael looked at me. You kept it. It's in a box in my closet. For the first time since he turned around, his expression softened. His eyes filled. Mine did too. Neither of us moved. Then Michael opened his arms. It wasn't a dramatic run. There was no music. No one in the airport applauded. I stepped forward and my brother pulled me against him. He still hugged the same way. One hand high on the back. The other gripping the shoulder. For a second I was 27 again, standing in an empty house with a moving truck outside. Then I felt him shaking. I'm sorry, he said. I couldn't tell whether he meant the argument, the years, or the things he had believed. So I answered for all of it. Me too. We stood there longer than two grown men usually stand in an airport holding each other. I didn't care. 21 years had passed. I was not letting pride decide when the hug ended. Sarah started recording again. That footage is difficult for me to watch. Not because it is sad. Because you can see how quickly we become brothers again. Michael pulls back and wipes his face. Then he looks at me and says, "Your hair looks terrible." I tell him, "You don't have enough hair to criticize mine." He laughs. It is the same laugh I remember from childhood. Sharp at first. Then breathless. We collected his suitcase and went to a restaurant near the airport. We stayed for 4 hours. Michael missed the first afternoon of his convention. He did not care. We compared stories. That was when we learned how carefully our lives had been edited. Mom told Michael I did not attend Evan's high school graduation because I had gone fishing. I had never been invited. Mom told me Michael skipped Sarah's wedding because he believed Lisa would be there. Sarah wasn't married yet. Mom had confused the engagement party with a wedding, then built a story around why Michael had not attended something that had not happened. Some lies were deliberate. Others may have been her trying to hide earlier lies. The letters were the strangest part. Michael believed Mom had written them after copying phrases from the 2 real letters he gave her. She knew how he spoke. She knew details from both our lives. She created the reconciliation she had prevented, then placed it in a box for me to find after her death. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was her final attempt to fix what she had broken without having to admit it while she was alive. We will never know. For a while that uncertainty consumed me. I wanted a confession. A note. A recorded explanation. Something that made the facts fit neatly. There was nothing. Only documents. Letters. Memories. And 2 sons who had wasted half their adult lives defending themselves from things the other had never said. Michael stayed at my house for the rest of his trip. We sat up late the first night drinking coffee. Neither of us drinks much anymore. Age had made us boring in similar ways. At 2 in the morning, he asked why I never called him directly after Mom died. I thought you hated me, I said. I thought you hated me. I asked first. He laughed. Then his face became serious. I was jealous of you. I wasn't expecting that. You were jealous of me. You left. You thought I was selfish for leaving. I also wanted to leave. That truth was harder for him to admit than anything about Mom. He told me he had been accepted into a technical program in Chicago before Dad's stroke. He never went. Dad needed help. Mom was terrified. Claire was pregnant. Michael stayed because staying seemed like the decent choice. Then he punished me for making a different one. I made you responsible for the life I didn't have, he said. I looked down at my coffee. I made you the villain so I wouldn't have to feel guilty. We were both quiet. Then Michael said we were idiots. Yes. Mom didn't invent all of it. No. That mattered. It would have been easy to blame her for the entire separation. But she did not create our pride. She used it. She widened cracks we had already made. Michael and I could have called each other. We could have visited. We could have asked one direct question instead of accepting 20 years of second-hand answers. We didn't. That part belongs to us. Rebuilding a relationship after 2 decades is not as simple as one airport hug. The hug was the beginning. After that came awkward phone calls. Missed expectations. Stories one brother remembered and the other had forgot. I visited Michael in North Carolina. He took me fishing. I hate fishing. I went anyway. He came back to Arizona for Sarah's wedding. He danced badly with her and cried during the father-daughter dance even though he was not the father. I met Evan as an adult. He had 2 children. The first time one of them called me Uncle Danny, I had to excuse myself and stand in the bathroom until I could speak normally. There were also arguments. Real ones. Michael still thinks answering a text with a thumbs up is rude. I still avoid difficult conversations until they become emergencies. He brings up Dad more than I want. I defend Mom more than he thinks I should. We are not healed in some perfect, permanent way. We are practicing. That is what reconciliation actually looks like. Practice. Calling again when the first conversation feels uncomfortable. Booking the flight. Saying the embarrassing thing. Asking, "Did you really say that?" before believing someone else's version. Michael keeps one of Mom's copied letters in his desk. I asked him why. He said, "Because it brought you back." I keep the rest. Not because they were honest. Because they showed me something true. Even when the words were not his, the longing inside them belonged to both of us. Last Christmas, Michael and his family came to my house. It was the first Christmas we had spent together since our father was alive. At dinner there was an empty chair beside me. For years, empty chairs had represented the people who refused to show up. That night it was simply an extra chair. No meaning. No accusation. Just furniture. After everyone went to bed, Michael and I sat outside. The desert was cold. People don't expect that, but it gets cold at night. He handed me a small box. Inside was Dad's silver Timex. The same watch we had argued about after the funeral. I thought you gave this to Evan. I did. Then why do you have it? He gave it back. I can't take it. Yes, you can. Mike. He said Grandpa would probably think this whole thing was stupid. I laughed. That sounds like Dad. Michael fastened the watch around my wrist. It no longer worked. The hands were frozen at 6:17. I asked whether he knew when it had stopped. No idea. I looked at the scratched face. For once I didn't care that time had stopped. We hadn't. Before Michael flew home, we returned to the same airport where he had turned around and found me behind him. At the security entrance, he hugged Sarah first. Then he hugged me. Don't disappear again, he said. You either. He picked up his bag. Then he turned back. Danny. Yes. You still tap my shoulder and duck, I'm punching you. I waited until he faced forward. Then I tapped the shoulder of the man standing beside him and walked away. Michael's laugh followed me halfway across the terminal. I used to think the long way home was about distance. It is. It is about all the excuses we place between ourselves and the people we love. Pride. Fear. Old arguments. Stories we never verify. Sometimes the person you miss is not lost. They are standing only a few feet away, waiting for one of you to turn around. My brother and I lost 21 years. We cannot get them back. But we can decide what happens to the years still in front of us. And maybe that is the question for anyone holding onto an old family wound. How much more time are you willing to lose just to avoid being the first person who reaches out? Optional short title ideas. 1. My brother did recognize me. 2. 21 years without a word. 3. The airport reunion that exposed everything. 4. My mother kept us apart. 5. He thought I had abandoned him. Optional thumbnail text. 1. I never stopped looking. 2. He did recognize me. 3. Mom lied to us. 4. 21 years gone. 5. One letter changed everything.